So good morning. My name is Karen A. in Jerusalem, Israel. It is my honor and my privilege to host you here at the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast. We're on live every Friday at 8 a.m. UK time, 10 a.m. South Africa, Israel time, and anywhere else you might be in the world. You could do the math. You can check us out at Reco12.com, where we have a repository of recovery resources from people suffering from all addictions, all afflictions. You might find recordings of people in AA, NA, OA, GA. You might find some great experience, strength, and hope of people with people addictions, Codependence Anonymous, Al-Anon, adult children of alcoholics, et cetera, et cetera. We think that we're relevant to anyone who is suffering or is related to somebody who is suffering. Again, whether they are an anorexic, a bulimic, a workaholic, a hoarder, a clutterer, and you could feel free to add anything else you'd like to the list. We are people who have found recovery working the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Many of us do actively work this program every day and sponsor people every day. And that has been the biggest gift given to us. So here we are passing it forward. While we have a relatively intimate meeting here online, I want to assure you that your presence makes a difference. And our guest, of course, always makes a difference. And about 350 people listen to these recordings weekly. So this is a big deal, spreading your recovery light. Again, if you'd like to check out any of our previous podcasts, you've also got Justin's podcast, the original flagship Reco12 podcast. We've got Noodle It Out with Nikki, the Big Book Roundtable with Justin and Nikki at Reco12.com. If you'd like to contribute your seventh tradition, you could do so on that website too, and that's Reco12.com/support. We accept PayPal and Venmo, and that helps cover the cost of the Zoom and technology stuff that's Justin's expertise. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Rachel A. in space. Bet you're curious to know what that means. I am. Cliffhanger.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome.
I'm Rachel. I'm an alcoholic. And please time me for sure. Tell me when you want me to stop. Give me like 2 minutes or something.
Sure. You'll have half an hour. And then we'll take Q&A. Either people could post their questions in the chat if they're worried about forgetting. Or I'm happy to let people unmute and ask direct and get the benefit of Rachel A. in Space's experience, strength, and hope. I'm going to mute myself, Rachel A. in Space. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen, for asking me to come. And, I really liked when you were giving that intro and talking about all the other types of ways that people can suffer from the ism, because the reality for me, what I learned around here, and I always like to say this when I speak, especially at bigger meetings, and there's not a lot of us on camera here, and that's okay, because I know that we're all kind of doing what we're doing and stuff, but it's like, I always Lisa's heard me speak before, and it's good to see you, Lisa. It's like, I came in and I thought I had a drinking problem. And it's like, I would say, how many of you think you have a drinking problem or thought you had a drinking problem, even if you don't anymore? People will raise their hand, and I raised my hand, and I found out I didn't have a drinking problem. I had a drinking solution. And that was hard for me because the thing is if I just had a drinking problem, I would have stopped drinking, and then there would have been no more problem, right? If we just had a drinking problem, it would be like, oh, okay, any of the stuff that happened from my drinking, I would have been able to, clear up pretty quickly, right? Maybe it would have taken some time. I mean, some of us create some pretty big havoc from the drinking, even legal offenses, or medical problems, But the thing is that I found for me, that when I stopped drinking, and this is stuff we can look at in the book when they talk about, are you moderate drinker, hard drinker, real alcoholic? Hard drinkers, they have a sufficient reason to stop, and they can stop. Sometimes they look very similar to real alcoholics. Talks to me about that, I believe, more about alcoholism. And, all of that, like all the way from the doctor's opinion to more about alcoholism is step one. If you're not familiar, for anybody listening to this. And, my talk today was, I asked Karen to say, I thought step 6 was just one paragraph in the big book. And I think a lot of people, the first time they go through the steps, step 6 and 7 for them are almost a flyby. And that was my experience the first time I got sober. And I remember I had an addiction therapist that I saw once a week on top of my regular therapist. And I was living in a sober living. I was 21 years old. And she said to me, she goes, "You're not done with step 6. She wasn't my sponsor. But she had 28 years in Narcotics Anonymous, her and her husband. And I was like, what? And she says to me, she goes, "You do this." And she's listing off all these character defects. And it was so funny because one of them she said to me was seductive. And it was so funny because I was willing to be arrogant. I was willing to be selfish. I was willing to be self-centered. I was willing to be prideful and manipulative and all these things that she was saying, because they'd been on my list. And, I'd done a very thorough 4-step with my sponsor and a reading of a 5th step. And then she goes, seductive. And I don't know why that one hit me and I was offended by it, but I was. And I go, what? And she goes, "Rachel, you seduce men, you seduce women, you'd seduce a tree if you could." And I was like, Venra, step through the heart. And, at the time, I wasn't able to look at something like that because, I think we have different levels of willingness and different levels of insight. And some of it comes with age and some of it comes with, willingness. And some of it comes with different, like as we go through the steps more and more. And at that point in time, I couldn't see something like that, and I couldn't even hear it because to me, what I heard was, "Oh, you're criticizing me. You're telling me that I'm my personality. There's something wrong with who I just am as a person." But as I got older, I began to see that there was this charming, seductive sort of endearing quality about me, but that when I turned it into something manipulative, it wasn't good, right? It was, and so this is, I've heard several people in the last month or two that I really, 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 really respect. One of them was my sponsor, Young L. Another one was Ralph W. If you guys have heard of Ralph W. from Los Angeles, and I believe another one was Sheldon F. from Las Vegas, talking about why is there only 2 paragraphs in the big book on 6 and 7. And they said, because the entire book is on 6 and 7. And I loved that. And that what I realized is as I stay sober, I recognize that my character defects get more sneaky. They do. There is a glaring obviousness when I first get sober of a life managed by Rachel. That second part of the first step, a life managed by Rachel cannot be a success. Whether it's before I've picked up a drink, while I'm drinking, or even after I stop drinking. There is unmanageability that will take place. It's something I've had to recognize in step work, and it's something I have to help sponsees see. And that's why it says, why do we have to work step 1 perfectly, right? Because what will happen is that, it tells me liquor was but a symptom. I have to get down to causes and conditions because a person like me, once I stop drinking, that's when the real craziness starts. That's when the real work has to start, because what will happen for a person like me is I'm going to get really uncomfortable at first. Once I put down a drink or once I put down whatever, because as I stay sober, I have to have emotional sobriety as the years build up, or things are going to get really, really uncomfortable. They are. And when I got sober this time, because I had 7 years, I went out, and then I didn't just come right back. I was out for 7 years. I took a lot of dirty cakes. I stuck around the rooms. I lied to myself about the fact that I'd used because I went out on pain medicines. I went out on narcotics, and they were prescribed to me by the doctors. And the thing is that I'm not here to say what people should or shouldn't do. It tells us in the book that we seek outside help when necessary. You have a surgery. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. You get diagnosed with cancer. I'm not telling you what you should or shouldn't do. But the thing is, and I've had surgeries in this sobriety, and I have medical problems still, and I have significantly worse medical problems now. But the thing is what happened is I started lying. And when you lie to yourself, the thing is, when I lied to me, I'm definitely going to lie to you. And the thing is, it tells me that if I'm constitutionally incapable of being honest with myself, that's the people that they say can't get this program. Everybody else, they say, can get it. Even if I have grave emotional and mental disorders, I can still stay sober. And I do. I've had some. I've had suicidal depression. I've had severe anxiety. I have major traumas, PTSD. I can stay sober. I can stay sober through that. However,
got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
if I'm in so much denial and justification and rationalization that I'm lying to me, and therefore I can't differentiate the true from the false, and my alcoholic life seems the only normal one, so therefore I'm lying to you, I can't stay sober through that. I can't stay sober through that, right? And so how does that look like step 6, right? How is that step 6, right? Well, what that looks like is that maybe with years sober, I go, I have an idea, or something seems good to me, right? And my friend Terry, it was a talk by Marty C., but my friend Terry did another talk. It was amazing. Terry F., that it's the line, when he comes out of the cellar and he says, don't see nothing here wrong, like ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing? And it's when we just get sober and we don't do anything else. So nothing changes if nothing changes. Like I'm on the phone with a customer service person and I'm getting all angry because you're not doing what I want in the moment. My selfish see, that's what I was taught when I did inventory. Selfishness is my thinking processes. Self-seeking is my behaviors. So how does that help me figure out what my list is, right? And the thing is my list is to help me know what I need to be willing to give up. But that doesn't happen in my time. That happens in God's time. My job is to be entirely ready. And that's about willingness. That's about willingness. And the thing is, I can't, just like everything else, I used to come to meetings when I was first sober this time, and I'd be like, how do you magically create willingness, right? People are going, oh, just be willing, just be willing, just be willing. And I'd think, well, what am I supposed to do? Just like go up to the magical unicorn and have him fart out some willingness and like a sunshine and a rainbow for me? And the thing is that sometimes I just have to start with asking God, who I now believe that's what I call my higher power, God, and that's not for, everybody else has to figure that out. But sometimes I just have to ask for the willingness to be willing, because sometimes I'm in a place where I'm not, I went through a couple, like a month or two where I relapsed in a eating disorder, and I was really, really struggling. And I there was a part of me that wanted to stop, and there was a part of me that did not want to stop. And I look at that as a form of control, right? A form of controlling and managing. And I'm going, God, I'm not completely trusting you here. I'm not completely trusting you, and I'm not completely willing to give this to you, right? So I'm willing to give you my drinking and my drugs, and I have been for almost 10 years, right? I don't need to do that anymore. But this I think I still need to do. I still need to do this, and I need to hang on with claw marks. So what does that look like? I'm being controlling, and I'm managing it, and I'm going, hey, I don't completely trust you. And so what is that going to look like? It's going to affect my relationships. And my sponsor had me look at, had me flip back to the bedevilments. He had me flip back and look at page 52, which, my brain goes, oh, well, that's part of step 2. That's part of step 2. That's in, we agnostics. And I went, and he's like, and he had me do it as a step 1. And so my brain thinks I know everything and thinks I have to be in charge. And so sends me this assignment, and right under it, it says, if you feel yourself being resistant in any way or questioning this because you've been sober for many years. And I'm like, oh my God, you know me so well. Stop it, young. And so, and that's the thing is, as an alcoholic, that is a character defect too, right? I have knowledge, but maybe I don't know how to apply it. So I think I know better than you. That's arrogance, right? With years sober, or maybe coming back sober, right? Coming back in after you've had time. That's contempt prior to investigation. It tells me to be aware of that. My friend said something that I thought was interesting in a meeting. He said, maybe someone else's character defect, or maybe my character defect, maybe God is having that person hang on to that a little bit longer, or having me hang on to it a little bit longer because somebody else needs to learn something from me being difficult, or this other person being difficult. And I have absolutely experienced that in the rooms. Someone being so challenging. Sorry, my internet's being a little crazy. I hope you guys can still hear me. But someone else being so challenging and me being so frustrated, and then having to learn how to have forgiveness and patience and tolerance, and learning how to go, okay, I don't have to control this. I have to learn how to forgive this person for the things they've done to me and the things they've done to other people, and feeling like, and gossip and going, I need to make an amends to these people that I gossiped to. Maybe they were newer people, so I was being a bad example, and I now need to, make an amends for gossip, and I need to make an amends to this person that I feel like I really don't like, because I've created an unsafe environment, even though I feel like they're the ones who created an unsafe environment. I can't look at their part. It tells me that in step 4. It tells me that on page 67. It says, referring to our list again, putting out of our minds the wrongs others had done. And this is all what it's about. Because the thing is, maybe I'm doing a 10-step, maybe I'm doing a 4-step, doesn't matter, right? I have to go, we resolutely looked for our own mistakes. Where had we been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and frightened? Though a situation had not been entirely our fault, we tried to disregard the other person involved entirely. Where were we to blame? This is all stuff that ends up helping us figure out what are our defects of character, right? What are those things in us that are no longer serving us? So maybe another person is helping me by their behavior that I find uncomfortable, right? And maybe sometimes someone's not really even doing anything. It's just my own assumptions. Sometimes it's my own perceptions. And the thing is it says the inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our own faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly, and we're willing to set these matters straight. And again, even in what we call the sex inventory, my sponsor has me take sex out of it and has me look at it as a relationship. Like, if I'm feeling, uncomfortable in any way, it talks, he has me look at it in terms of, where had we been selfish, dishonest, or inconsiderate? Whom had we hurt? Did we unjustifiably arouse jealousy, suspicion, or bitterness? And then I look at page 70, and then I go, suppose we fall short of the chosen ideal and stumble. Does this mean we are going to get drunk? Some people tell us so, but this is only a half truth. It depends on us and our motives. Motives is a big part of step 6 and 7. I go back to that counselor who told me about being seductive and manipulative. It's like, before I say something in a situation, I often have to look at what my motives are. I see this a lot come up for me in romantic situations, but I also see it come up for me in situations. Now that we have these online meetings, a lot of us are in these WhatsApp groups, and a lot of us have positions where we're admins, or we're considered somewhat leaders of a group, especially if we have years sober. And it's easy. We're getting messages constantly, 24 hours a day. And so it's easy to want to correct something if we see something wrong. It's easy to feel instigated emotionally. It's easy to sometimes feel like something is directed at you. And sometimes it even is directed at you, And sometimes you have to take a step back and go, the best thing I can do is say nothing, right? The best thing I can do is not engage. And that took me several years to learn that, because sometimes it was like, maybe I'm not the one that needs to handle this situation, right? And that's so hard, right? Because
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
my brain wants to be like, oh, I can fix this. I can help here. I can do this. And sometimes I had to learn to be like, you know what? Sometimes patience and silence is the best action form that I can take. Sometimes prayer. I worked with a sponsor before Young, and what she taught me, she came into my life at a time when I had a huge amount of anger and resentment towards one specific person specifically, but also towards a lot of things that had happened, what I felt like was to me. And, I'd gone through like a really bad medical trauma. And the reality is that, I'd had medical issues for years, but I went through this very serious medical trauma, and I was stuck at home. When I first got sick, I could barely walk. I was having issues that were creating almost like a dementia-like thing that was happening for me. I couldn't, use my stove. I stopped using my stove. I wasn't driving. There was so much going on. And, the story behind Rachel A in Space is actually that, I was so out of it that I couldn't remember things like time frames and stuff. And when I first went on Zoom, I just picked a background because I was in bed all the time, and blue is my favorite color. Because if you remember when we were first going on Zoom, for those of us who got more than 4 or 5 years sober, the backgrounds, I didn't want people to always see me in bed, and I was very sick, and a lot of times I was in just like a PJs or something. And so it was sort of a reference to like Doctor Who almost, like outside of time and space. And so it was sort of like Rachel is in space, you know. So a lot of times people think now it's like, oh, because she has the space background, but that's not what it was. It was like, I have no idea where I am. I'm in space, like a space cadet, you know, and I could be like Doctor Who traveling through time and space. Like, when did it happen? 3 weeks ago, 3 months ago, 3 seconds ago, who knows? And, but I was sober, you know? And so, to go back to what I was talking about, my sponsor always says that, you know, if we're looking at that, what we call the sex inventory, but we can refer to it as any relationship, that it tells us in here that, you know, if we talk about that whenever we think that there's an issue and we have maybe, you know, we've fallen below our chosen ideal, that we can turn to service. Basically, we focus on service. We focus on service, and whenever we think that self-will has blocked us from God, we turn to service. Because the answer always for me in this program is more God, less Rachel, more you, less Rachel. You know, I found myself with several years sober with no friends. I was a really miserable person. And I had this beautiful opportunity, didn't feel like it at the time, to be a newcomer in another program. And I took it and just allowed myself to kind of be crazy and new in another program and be new. But one of the best things I learned was that I could ask other people how they were doing. I could like really listen. And, you know, one of the things I love about the 12-step promises, and if you didn't know this, there's promises for every step, and there's actually other promises too. And it talks about, you know, and I know I'm going all over the place, but like I said, the entire book is about the 6th step. It tells me that life will take on a new meaning, to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. You know, I used to talk to people, and I did most of the talking, and I talked about myself, and I kind of didn't even remember what other people said. I know when people get like exciting things in their lives now, I'm actually really happy for them. And that is not who I was before. It's not that I was a bad person. It's just that I was really self-centered. So I just kind of like would not really like even think to ask you or even be focused on it, you know, because I was so focused on me, you know, so like I actually really care and I get really excited about people now. And so like that was like one of the defects for me that like was removed, you know, like for most of the time. Before I got sober the first time, like, or this time, I have almost 10 years, my closest friend, basically my only friend, had a cancer scare. And the first thought that came into my mind was, oh my God, how am I going to live without this person? And I remember thinking that, and that's what I thought. And I felt terrible that I had that thought, but that's what I thought. And then I asked him how he was and what could I do and how could I be helpful? But that was the thing I thought. And it's crazy because I've had so many people that I care about who've gotten sick and things have happened, and I've lost people, you know, in the last like 10 years or so. And I'm just not that person anymore, right? Like, you know, I have people that get sick and I, you know, think, what can I do? How can I be helpful? And I've been very sick. I've almost died several times from this medical condition I have. But, you know, I show up. I'm having a colonoscopy tomorrow and an endoscopy, and I've been doing colonoscopy prep. And so, like, I told Karen, I was like, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom like until like right before I'm speaking. But like the thing is like, I knew I was speaking and I didn't want to like cancel or something because like sometimes service is somewhat inconvenient and you want to know something, that's okay for me today. Like that's okay for me today. I love showing up for Alcoholics Anonymous and I love saying yes. And I love the people that are in my life. Like one of my favorite people who's a circuit speaker, Terry F, is in the area where I live right now. He's visiting with his family and he like surprised me and showed up like yesterday. And I got to see him and we're gonna spend some time next week together. And it's like people were not coming to town and going, hey, can I hang out with you? Like while I'm there, you know, like that was not my existence. And that's really exciting for me. And I know the thing that I really wanted to share about, and I told this to Karen, was that I saw my life as a like sequence of events of just these like traumas and victimizations. And I looked at the world as like, things are just being done to me. I have no power, I have no anything, and I have been victimized and everything's being done to me. And I think that, you know, like that victim complex was actually one of my biggest defects of character. It was. And it doesn't mean that I didn't actually have traumas. I did. I absolutely did. And I'm not taking that away from any of us that have that. I think we all come here and we have a story. And it's not what made me an alcoholic, but it was a really great reason to drink. It was a really great reason to use opiates. And I remember the first time I ever heard Alice S. speak, she said, victims don't recover. And I was like, this bitch. And, you know, and she's a good friend now and one of my favorite speakers. And I love her. And she really changed my life because what she meant was not, hey, like if you've been a victim, you can't recover. What she was talking about was the idea of when we are stuck in that place, we are paralyzed. We're paralyzed. How do we change? How do we change? How do we get better? Right? Because when I got here, I was stuck in this place of everything is your fault or everything is my fault. And if I'm stuck like that, how do I do inventory? How do I get better? How do I learn the things that are not effective for me to help me, you know, like learn how to function in a different way in this world? And that is what inventory helps me with. It's what the 6th step helps me uncover, right? It's help, and 6 and 7. It's what it helps me go, okay, these are methods that are no longer working in my life, and they're keeping me separate from you. They're keeping me separate from you and being of service to you and being of service in the world, and therefore being able to make whatever amends I need to make. It's also what, you know, my previous sponsor helped me realize it's what helps me get to a place of forgiveness. I didn't think I'd ever be able to forgive certain things, especially things in my family. I thought I would hate my parents until the day they died and then until the day I died. And you want to know something? I have a relationship with my parents today. They're both 83. And are there times they say things where I'm like, oh my God, those people. Yes, but you want to know something? I live really close to them. I live like 7 minutes away from my parents. And there are times that we laugh. There are times that I got to see them. And, you know, when I came back to the program, I was very spiritual, but not religious at all. And I've actually even gone back to my religion, which I never thought would happen. And I'm not saying that that's for everybody. It isn't. There's plenty of people where that never happens. But for me, it did. And it's really been more recent, really only the last like 6 months or so that I've been pulled back to my religion. And it doesn't matter, you know, what religion or anything. But for me, you know, it's happened. And it's also just based on, you know, some other factors in the world and life. But I've found this deep connection with God. It tells me in the book that lack of power is our dilemma. We have to find we have to find a power by which we can live. And that's, that's the entire purpose of this book. And it's so funny because we spend so much time talking about how we're powerless, or grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we focus so much on the things that, like, I'm powerless, or I have to have acceptance, or all these things. But the funny thing is, like, we're actually trying to find a power. It is about finding that power. And that when I can align my will with God's will, actually, like, I am able to accomplish quite a few things, and that I hope for anybody who has not had the experience, because I can't just think about God, right? I have to experience God. I have to have an experience. And that's what the 12 steps have given me, is the ability to have an experience. It tells me, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of working these steps, that's what it promises you. Doesn't promise you a new car, doesn't promise you the significant other, doesn't promise you a mansion. The promise of working the steps is the spiritual awakening. But the thing is, what the spiritual awakening has given me is that, I can be really sick and my body can be in pain and I can be sick, but my soul is free. My soul is free. I get to be free of the mental obsession one day at a time. And there are times that I decide to take my will back. I do. And I do crazy shit. And then I have to realize that maybe I need some more freedom from that spiritual malady, and I need to actually work more on that, I need to do more for the, mental obsession. And what I realize is that's step work. Treatment for the mental obsession, step work. Treatment for the spiritual malady, service. Service. Working with others, service in meetings, prayer, and meditation. That's what I've learned around here. Because the thing is I will never be perfect. I will never be non-human and have no defects of character. And all of us have different ones that show up in different ways, right? And I will never be the person that doesn't show up here. But one of the things that I learned was I used to come to meetings and I wanted to look perfect. I did. It was too painful for me. I thought that if you saw me the way that I saw me, you'd never accept me. You'd hate me. You would think I was working a bad program. And I finally learned that when I showed up as the authentic, vulnerable me, people loved me. I started to have so many friends in Alcoholics Anonymous when I was of service to people. When I showed up, when I started helping newcomers, I ended up getting a ton of sponsees. How I started having friends was when I learned how to be a friend. When I stopped worrying about the fact that I didn't have friends and what I didn't have and what I needed to get for me. That's actually when I started having stuff. And people started showing up for me because I showed up for you. It's kind of funny how it works that way in Alcoholics Anonymous. When I made more time for Alcoholics Anonymous, people made more time for me. Crazy how that happens here, right? It's so crazy. And it's so funny. The last 2 years on my birthdays, my notable birthdays and my sprouty birthdays, I've gotten hundreds of messages, like on Facebook, text messages, like phone calls, like emails, like all the social medias. I mean, like everything, And what it said to me is that this is the promises coming true. It's the beauty of the program. People saying to me, I was and I don't say this to toot my own horn, but what I say, I was in a meeting the other day and I was just sitting in my home group in an after meeting, and this guy came on and he was talking, And I just said to him, he's saying how great he's doing and everything. And I just said, I'm so happy to see you. And I'm so happy to see you. It's so good. You know, it was really scary when you were out there. And he goes, you saved my life, you know. I love you. And that's the best gift we can ever get around here, right? It's not money, property, and prestige. Something like that is incredible.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
And then I have to be careful because I don't want my ego to get too big, right? Like, but something like that is precious. It's more precious than diamonds. It's more precious than gold, right? Knowing that somebody feels that kind of love and appreciation, because I feel that kind of love and appreciation for so many people in this program that have saved me, that have taken phone calls. I got a random text from a guy, and I couldn't even figure out who it was until I spoke at a meeting a few nights ago. And I was really having a bad night. I was having a bad day. I wanted to act out again on eating disorder stuff, and I was trying to hang on. And it was just a text saying, you don't know how many people love and appreciate you. You have a whole army of people that are praying for you. And I just put down this thing that I was about to do. And I went, thank you so much. And I started crying. And then I went to my sponsorship meeting with my sponsor. My sponsorship family is very huge. With my sponsor and a bunch of his sponsees and people they sponsor. And I made it through the night, and it was beautiful. And I just thought, this random person contacted me. And I've done that before. I've reached out to people, and I just went, you know, we have to do it, unity, service, and recovery. And that's the beauty of this program. So I don't know how long I've been talking and when I'm supposed to shut up, but I feel like that's a good place. And the last thing I just want to say before I stop is that I mentioned that I used to have this really like victim stance and stuff. And I finally learned that, you know, that everything changed for me when I realized that things weren't being done to me, that like life wasn't being done to me, it was being done for me. And that's weird, right? Because I finally realized that I was being led exactly where I needed to be, because God sees around corners and I don't, you know. And I wouldn't trade the life that I have today. Yeah, physical pain. Yeah, I get sick a lot. Yeah, you know, but that the people, it's like Lisa lives in the UK and I get to go to meetings with her like almost every day. I get to see her. She's awesome. And my sponsor's in the UK and I love him. I do. He really helps me. And I have all these amazing people. A lot of them I haven't met in person, but some of them I'm getting to meet in person. Like, my best friend lives in Alaska, and I met her in July, and she's coming out in like 2 weeks. Just again, and another friend is coming from Massachusetts, and a close friend that I've known for 23 years is coming to stay with me for 9 days, and we're all going to see Oasis play. And I'm so excited. And so I just want to say that, like, you know, this program has saved my life and I'm so grateful. So I'm gonna stop there. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you so much for sharing about your recovery journey, the experience of needing to keep going, even when you're having relapse, even when you're, floating in space, when there's confusion, when there's, ADHD, when there's, whatever we all have going on. You spoke about being of service. You spoke about humility. You spoke, of course, about step 6, which is really cool because I've really gotten into step 6 this past year, realizing that, just every day, every moment, that any issue I have going on, I've got to be utterly willing to have God remove these character defects. And whenever I'm frustrated or confounded or upset or having a resentment, it's because I'm not. It's just that simple. You spoke a lot about step 6, and I really hope everyone took that to heart, that where I see that I'm fighting something, frustrated, angry at someone, hurt by someone, I really related to what you wrote about having, what you said about having a victim complex. I also realized that that's a real game changer in how my day's going. When I get into victim complex, I'm really tired. I'm really angry. I'm fighting with everyone. I feel real malaise, and we must smash the delusion that we're like other people. Other people maybe could whine and be victims and complain and be that black cloud, but for us it means insanity or death. For us addicts, being a victim, and I realized that spiral from feeling like a victim, feeling everybody's hurt me, to not having the will to live, can go real furious, real fast. I heard a lot about that. I see a woman living in the 4th dimension. I love what you said about changing, being a person who is really selfish, being a person who takes interest in others. I loved what you opened with, going from the last to the first, about your counselor telling you were seductive, and isn't it amazing how those very defects that so defined us in the beginning might be very different than the ones we're carrying now, but that higher power gives us a chance to change and evolve in this program all the time. So maybe at once you were seductive, and then you were a victim, and as we grow along these lines, and in emotional sobriety, that changes. And the big book tells us that, when calamities or dark spots come up, it doesn't say if, it says when, meaning, different things are going to happen today. For you, it might be, your friends, your health issues. For me, it might be, my kids, what time they wake up, my teenagers, etc. For someone else, it may be their boss. For someone else, for a lot of us, it's mom, it's dad, and just a chance to be ready and willing to have higher power take away those character defects. Even if today I've woken up in space, and I don't mean that in the good Rachel A kind of way. If I feel a little bit all over the place, well, first thing I do, is pray and meditate and ask for the next right step. I'll make a list, be on this meeting. Rachel spoke about that too. Service, I have a list of about 35 things I need to do today, but got to host this podcast every week and bring some more strong recovery into the Afro-Euro time zone. So we take the next right step or action. If I've got the character defect of unmanageability, which I felt this morning, one step at a time. Meditate, pray, make a list. Commit my food. I've also been funny. She spoke about her eating disorder. I've also been funny with my food over summer vacation. Why don't I recommit my food to my old sponsor and make some manageability about that? And then little by little, I'll make my plan for what I'm about to have for breakfast after this call. And somehow higher power makes manageability in my life. Rachel A spoke about that. I do some service. I start being a friend. All of a sudden, everybody wants a piece of this, right? Everybody wants to hang out with me. Everybody's inviting me. I just was on vacation all week, being a service to my kids. And I was invited out for all my Shabbat meals. One of them was really a God shot because it's a young couple that I always host. And like, why would they have us 7 people over? They're young enough to be my kids, but it's like, you just keep doing the next right thing. Again, I'm personalizing what I got from Rachel A. She spoke about you do the service and like just, eyes on the prize, and higher power takes care of you. And I promise if you look at that today, you reach out to a newcomer, you sponsor someone, you work with your sponsees, you can private message me or private message Rachel and tell us how that's come back to you. Because the promises say that it will, and we have proof for that. It will come back to you, whether you want to call that divine providence, whether you want to call it karma, whether you want to call it, whatever, a tree, it's real in the spiritual world. So without further ado, I'd like to take your questions for Rachel. Let's just take a quick look in the chat and see if we've got any there. Okay.
Yeah, it looks like there's a question.
Fabulous. We've got a question from Brindy.
Yeah, I'm happy to get to answer that.
Just read it aloud in case anyone can't see it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. It says, please can you share more about not being a victim and staying focused on God and recovery with medical challenges and being in physical pain? I experience much physical pain. I would love to answer more about that. I know that can be a huge challenge. As I have two different kind of big deal medical conditions. I have lupus, and I also have a condition called mast cell activation syndrome, which can just do all kinds of crazy stuff to you, depending on, what kind of flare you're having. And it can be really challenging because I think what happens is when you're not as sick, you're like, yeah, no, I'm gonna handle this. I'm gonna be great. And I think it's the same thing with an eating disorder too. Like you're like, yeah, I had that and I'm good now and I'm not going to do that and I have recovery. But I think it's really hard when you're faced with the actual issue and you get like really bad pain. When you're in it, there's a part of you that starts to feel like in this moment, I cannot escape this and I just need a moment of relief. And if I can just get one moment of relief, like, oh my God, I will be okay. And something that has helped me a lot is to recognize, whether it's physical or emotional, something that made me relapse in my previous sobriety was that there was this fear that would take over. And even before I got sober the first time, and I didn't have physical stuff at that point, but I had really severe depression. I was cutting as a child, and I had really severe eating disorders and stuff. I was hospitalized many times. There was this fear that would take over that felt, and the thoughts that would come with it would be, this is the worst feeling I've ever had. It's going to stay this severe, and it's going to stay this severe forever. And so my brain believed, it's at a level 10, 1 out of 10, it's at a level 10, and it will always be at a level 10. And so I think that if you believe something's intolerable and it will be intolerable forever, and that's the belief system that's going on inside your brain, whether it's that you believe you're a victim or not, that's really scary, right? It's understandable that anybody would feel terrified by that. And so it's understandable then why we would drink and use in a situation like that. And something that I really, really almost had to like reframe in my brain was, can I think of moments when it's not at a 10? Can I think of moments that there's things that I've done to relieve this on some level without drugs and alcohol? Like, are there times when, ice has helped, where meditation has helped, where physical therapy has helped, where I had some good times with my friends when I was out, where I was laughing so hard. I mean, even like, was having sex, or, I had an orgasm and I felt better or whatever. And I'm not trying to push, that in a risky way, but I'm just saying, like, can I think of something, like where I was doing something and I was truly enjoying myself and having fun, and I was distracted from this, right? And where meditation has helped me a lot, but that where this has been different and helpful and because I think that challenges that thought of that fear-based thought, and that has been very helpful for me, of reminding myself, because the fear is part of the alcoholism. The fear is part of the alcoholism. It's part of the mental obsession that says you can't handle this. You cannot possibly handle this. And what do we do with fear then, right? We take that fear to God. Because just like we're not capable of having enough willpower on our own to stop drinking or doing anything else, we're not capable of making fear go away. We're not capable of making anything. And fear is, in a sense, also kind of a character defect, right? So God may not make it entirely go away, but I can say something in a sense of like, hey, God, like, this is a really scary situation for me. This pain is a really scary situation for me. My brain is really trying to mess with me here regarding my thoughts about this. Like, please take my pain, please take my fear, and whatever you're not willing to take away, can you help me have a different perspective on it? Can you help me to have more courage? Can you help me to, be willing to use other methods? To deal with this? Can you help me to focus on meditation? Can you help me have more strength? Can you help me be focused on helping newcomers? And can you help me to, have more gratitude so that I can, have, a deeper experience with you, God? And that's really helped me, because I think that, yes, there are moments that I'm crying and I feel really scared. And I hope that that's helpful. Thank you for your question. I see a hand, and I also saw Jessica's question first, so I will get with you, Nira. It says, hi, my name is Jess, and I'm experiencing troubles with opening up about the chaos in my head. I isolated myself, and even in the program, it's difficult. How did you get over that struggle? Yeah, I really get that. Something that, was really scary for me is I was really, I see a timer that's about to go off. Okay. I was really worried about what other people would think of me, and I felt really socially awkward. In my case, I went from just in-person meetings, and just to give you some history, there were online meetings that existed before Zoom. They just were not as widely used. There were meetings that existed in chat form. There were meetings that existed in Skype form and other things, and even Zoom. It's just that when the pandemic started, alcoholics being as creative and as inventive as they were like, we can't not have our meetings. And so we were even better than like CEOs in businesses that were like, they needed meetings to meet. Alcoholics were like up and running with meetings and other 12-step programs within like, a couple days of like lockdowns in various areas. They were like, well, we're not going to not have our meetings. Screw that, And so everywhere else was like freaking out about like lockdowns, and alcoholics were like, we're on it. And so I actually found it much easier to start opening up in online meetings. I think there was a way in which people were, maybe it's just me that this was my perspective, but I actually felt that people were a little bit more accepting in online meetings. Not that they weren't accepting, but I think that in in-person meetings, people sort of had their little cliques of people that they were comfortable with. It's just natural. But I think online, you can find meetings that are very, very, like if they see somebody they don't know and you come in and you share and you're just like, hey, I just don't know anybody and I want to kind of be a part of your meeting. Like they'll be like, hey, welcome, And so, if you can find meetings that are like that, I mean, I'm more than welcome to share my home group, and you can come to my home group, and they would be really excited to meet you, Jessica. But in terms of opening up about the chaos in your head,
Rachel, let me stop you for a sec. I'm going to ask you to actually put your number in the chat. I'm going to do that too, Jessica. We can connect you to different online meetings because there are great fellowships. I met Rachel A. because Young has also kind of been my sponsor. I'm certainly in a sponsee family group, and we're half sisters now. We're full sisters. We're soul sisters. But we meet people. Some of my best recovery friends are people I've never met and might never meet because we've got very different lifestyles and different things going on. But I've got a lot of good friends. Brian here on this meeting is a good friend. She's in my country, but we haven't met face to face. Yeah, there is a solution, and you can work it, and you can work it virtually until there is a beauty. And I went to a lot of in-person meetings when I started, but you can do great work. Going to meetings online, working with others over the phone and online, and then just practicing these principles in all your affairs. There's we get together once a week is all the big book says. It didn't say Zoom can't be a part of that. So Rachel A, let's take one more question here, and then I'm going to ask you to pray us out. Okay.
Absolutely. No problem. And yeah, please, Jessica, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with you. Nira, I hope I'm saying that right. Please come on in.
Yes. Hi, Rachel. Thank you.
One last thing before Nira speaks. If any of you want to share your experience, strength, and hope are on this line and are recovered, Rachel, if you have any sponsees who are recovered, please reach out to me. We're always looking for new speakers here in the Afro-Euro time zone to spread the recovery. Okay, so make sure to reach out. Sorry, Nira. Go ahead, dear.
That's okay. I was just curious, Rachel. I wanted to ask because you've done this program for a long time, and you mentioned about health conditions. So when you are, because I hear God all the time. If I said that to a psychologist, it would be a problem. But I do hear God all the time. So for my conversations are like having with a normal human being. So when you are struggling, when you say that fear comes, do you hear as well your higher power, or do you do two-way prayers? Because sometimes I have to write my answers down as well. I was just curious, do you actually hear the voice?
I think that, I think that it's interesting because before I didn't, I would, and I think that the way I think about it is that there's different parts of me, like there's different parts of myself. There's parts of myself that are very healthy, right? There's a recovered part. There's a little girl part. There's a teenager part of myself. There's parts of myself that want to be kind of like risky and go out and do crazy things. But there is a part of myself that does absolutely like want to be completely fully committed. And yes, that God consciousness absolutely exists. And that as I have stayed sober longer, it's more connected. It's more connected to God. And so therefore the voice is absolutely louder. It's absolutely louder. And so, I know I had an experience, I'd say a few months ago, where I got so panicked about something. And then all of a sudden a calm washed over me. And it went, you don't have to be scared like this anymore. You don't have to, because the old you didn't feel like you'd be held or caught. You wouldn't be caught. You didn't know that you'd be caught in a situation like this. But now you know that even though you have no idea what's going to happen, it's what's supposed to happen. And I was crying and I was going, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And I walked into my bathroom. Sometimes I just walk into my bathroom and pacing around. And I just all of a sudden just was standing there still. And I went, okay. And I sat down on my bed and I just started doing the things I needed to do. And I was okay. I was okay. I just completely calmed down when I had that thought. And I truly believe that God put that thought into my brain of, now that you are going to be caught. No, you don't know what the actual thing is that's going to happen, but that whatever it is, it's what's supposed to happen. It is. And I just went, yeah, it is. And just was fine. And I never would have thought that before.
Thank you.
Thank you.
our big book says, sorry, I took a bite of something, that it is better to find God alone with someone who would not understand, right? So if you feel that your higher power is speaking to you, you're on the right track, and that can come in a lot of different forms. And don't even
sweat. It is, because I'm not sweating. It's just that it's a bit scary when you say it out loud. I had to share that yesterday at a meeting as well, and I felt really like, oh my God, on my own, literally. But then it felt good, so I know it's on the right path.
Well, we get
Thank you.
We get you. That's how it is. Yesterday it's like I took my daughter to the train station, and then I went to the beach and I had my coffee and my juice, and I was just looking at the ocean, and I was like, I thought I was doing her a favor dropping her off at the train station, when really, God just wanted me to see his big, beautiful creation and look at the Mediterranean Ocean. Isn't that wild? And the other day I took my sons to a prayer house to go pray. I thought, gosh, I'm always slaving away, running around, taking them. And then again, I went to the ocean, and there was someone playing the violin and another person playing the guitar and someone drumming some other thing. And I was like, oh, I wasn't being their slave. God just wanted to bring me to this beautiful spot, and he needed an excuse to get me here and have me look at the ocean at night. And it's like, those are the best, most majestic times of my family vacation. And it was like, yeah, may you find him alone. Like I found him alone, or he brought me there, And I reached out to one of my sponsors, Nikki, and said, hey, look, God took me out on a date to the ocean at night, to the ocean for breakfast. So does everyone talk like that? No, but all the cool kids do. So you're in the right place. Okay, with that, I'm going to thank Rachel in Space. Really amazing, Rachel. Thank you for sharing with us. Thank you for sharing your experience, strength, and hope. God willing, I will send you the recording of this later in the week. Usually comes out Wednesday, but you'll forgive us if it takes some extra days. Justin's also a daddy with summer vacation, so we're all handling all that. And without further ado, I'm going to ask you to pray us out. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You'd asked me to pick a prayer, and I wanted to do the Thomas Merton prayer. I know Andy H always does that, and I really love it. So, my Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end, nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe that the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope that I have that desire in all that I am doing. I hope that I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. Therefore, I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you are ever with me, and you will never lead me to face my perils alone. Amen.